Gavin, founder, creator of Seps.io, and you're listening to
Two Regular Guys podcast,
hosted by
Terry Combs RG, regular guy,
and Aaron Montgomery.
the place to be for industry news.
The best dad jokes on earth, along with relevant topics to apparel decorators.
Put Pat to the wire.
Welcome into the show. It is Friday, August 1st, 2025. I'm Terry Combs. You can find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm very obviously not Aaron Montgomery. I'm Erich Campbell. I'm sitting in for Aaron, who's off at DAX Twin Cities right now. So today, Terry and I are going to talk about production training in the digital age. And I think we've got something to chew on for this one because there's quite a lot going on in this world right now.
I think we do too. And hey, it's not just AI we're going to talk about all aspects of digital training and that sort of thing. And Aaron is at the DAX show and he said he's going to effort to have us on in his booth there at the DAX show. So and the show just opened. So if anybody's watching us there in the American Print and Supply booth, hey everybody.
Hi, folks. I wish we could be there with you, but happy that you're over there with Aaron. Give him a hard time for us. We don't have him here to give a hard time today. So.
Ask him for a dad joke.
Yeah.
Make sure you stay to the very end. Aaron is sharing his secret sauce from the great beyond or Minnesota. Eric, this is might well play into the topic today since Aaron's sharing secret sauce via pre-recorded videos. So. And by the way, he's going to be talking about utilizing AI to help with creating price quotes. So all kinds of tie-ins there.
Wow, just look at him tying everything in and making it work with the topic today. It's like he's a professional or something. Like he knows what he's doing. All right. Well, there's one other person here who is definitely a professional that knows what she's doing, and she's waiting in the wings. We've got Teresa from ASI. Teresa Hagel is here. So why don't we get to the news?
Let's do the news.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. It's Teresa Hagel with ASI here to share the news with you. First up, I wanted to talk about ASI Chicago 2025, which wrapped up earlier in July 22nd to 24th. The industry is geared up to finish strong. Nearly 5,000 people came to ASI Chicago, and the show floor featured more than 70 first-time exhibitors. The show highlighted a shift toward lightweight, retail-inspired, and eco-conscious products. Standouts included new drinkware and lifestyle items like custom bikes and live plants. And of course, as always, there was a ton of education on topics like social media and business growth. And another highlight of the show was a powerful keynote from former Chicago Bear and NFL Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher on how to harness momentum and triumph over adversity. And of course, as always, we revealed the 2025 Counselor Top 40 Supplier and Distributor lists and all of the recipients of this year's Counselor Awards from Person of the Year to Sustainability Advocate of the Year. Next up, I was going to share with you some more news about tariffs. And the latest thing we have is Trump ends the de minimis exemption with an executive order. The de minimis loophole allowed low-value shipments valued at less than $800 to enter the U.S. without being subject to import duties or taxes. But however, the Trump administration officially ended that exemption via executive order on August 29th, citing misuse of the exemption for importing illicit drugs and undercutting U.S. businesses with unsafe or below-market goods. The change affects global trade, particularly retailers relying on low-cost imports from China and other common trading partners. And in the promo products industry, there are some suppliers who have been shipping small value orders directly from China to avoid the tariffs. So those companies can now expect higher pricing on shipping. Of course, that isn't the only tariff news. We just had heard about new reciprocal tariffs in dozens of countries that Trump has imposed. We have ongoing reporting on asicentral.com/news on how all of those changes will affect the promo industry. So keep up with our news there. Finally, the last thing I wanted to share was the 2025 Counselor State of the Industry report. Our Counselor Magazine's annual State of the Industry report. It just dropped at the end of July. It is packed full of actionable stats and noteworthy trends to help print and promo professionals succeed. We'll actually be talking about what's in the report more in depth during next week's episode of Two Regular Guys, but I just wanted to give a teaser to everyone because I'm so excited about this issue. It takes months and months of hard work, so the more we can talk about it, the better. The more people read it, the better. So here are just 3 little tidbits to whet your appetite for next week's discussion. First up, education is the top market for promo sales with nearly $3.5 billion in 2024 promo product sales. Next up, t-shirts remain the top promo product category, accounting for 16.1% of market share in 2024. Second up is drinkware with 10.4%. And then the last point I wanted to address are add-on services like company stores and kitting are becoming increasingly popular offerings for promo distributors as more companies seek to be a one-stop shop for clients who are looking for print, promo, and design services. But there's so much more info in the report, and we'll talk about it more at another, I guess, next week on the show. But anyway, that's my news, and back to you guys.
I guess I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to next week now for sure.
Every year I love the state of the industry. Already golden nuggets there that education is top market for promo sales. Who knew? So,
yeah, right. I mean, that not that those of us on the ground, I think we kind of understand that that's in there. We have that, but I think the conventional wisdom has been, oh, it's medical, it's this, it's that. There's people who have usually said that, but seeing education there, that's I mean, yes, we know a bit about it, but hearing that laid out is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and then of course Brian Urlacher being a keynote speaker, that's super cool, Hall of Famer. But isn't it funny what you get known for? Because now every time I go to Chicago, there are billboards everywhere talking about with Brian Urlacher's picture, talking about hair replacement. And there's a certain segment of the population that's all they're going to know him for.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm certainly not somebody to talk about it. I think maybe on this panel, we don't have a lot to say about hair replacement or Brian Urlacher's follicle status. But hey.
Well, and years ago when I was younger, Joe DiMaggio, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio,
yeah.
he became known to younger generations as Mr. Coffee. He was the Mr. Coffee commercial guy. One of the greatest baseball players who ever lived.
I think that's the funny thing about all of this, even the stuff we're about to talk about now, is that, as these times change, you can't really know exactly where it's headed, but you can find out or it's good for us to think about the fact that some people have come up in an age where this is the only way they've ever operated. That's the thing. Not everybody's coming from our history or our background on this stuff.
Exactly right. Right. So,
though before we get into serious stuff, I mean, I know you and I want to talk training bad. We couldn't help. We were already on the topic before we ever got started. But we do have at least one little bit of business we got to get done. There's a dad joke waiting in the wings, sir. And whether or not I groan, it's time for it.
Hey, I don't know if you noticed, I switched it out because I didn't even realize I was out walking yesterday morning early and school's in session. The high school by me just opened. Yeah. July 31st, back to school at the hottest time of the summer in Arizona. I don't get that, but I thought I needed some kind of something close to a back to school joke.
Well, we got a good one here, so why don't we get to it?
All right, Eric, what did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
I don't know. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
Supplies!
Supplies. All right.
That one. All right. Before we dive in, we want to thank everybody for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. We need your voices still. We would love to have the regulators participate in our show intros. Go to osg.link/intro, read a few sentences, be a part of every show. Don't be left out. We are always looking for new guests. So if you or anyone you know would like to join us, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys to book a future episode or email us at info@tworegularguys.com. with your show ideas. If you're listening to the podcast version of the show, we would appreciate you sharing the Two Regular Guys podcast with all of your industry friends so they can become regulators too. We would appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Podcast, wherever you do your podcast listening, we are there. And if you're watching us live right now, please join in with your comments and questions about training and using AI and all those areas of new opportunities in training.
Absolutely. And as we often do, we go and say hi to some of the folks who are here live. Like I said, if you're here live, jump in, tell your friends, grab some people, share this on your feed so that we can all get in here and share live. I know not everybody shows up to the live show. We have a lot of folks who listen after the fact, but if you're on live, we would love to have your insights on how you train. First and foremost, we had Doug showing up early saying hi to everybody. So hi, Doug. Thank you for being here. We also had Barb showing up. I can push buttons while I'm looking at the same time, saying hi to everybody and saying specifically hi to us. So hi, Barb. Happy to have you in as well. But if you're here, like I said, jump in. We love to have your comments. How are you using digital training assets? How are you making those assets? And what do you think about what's coming up in the world of training and getting those standard procedures down? All right.
Well, let's get started. What do you say?
Yeah, let's talk about it, man.
Let's first talk about training.
Sure.
And, in general, because as we've talked about on here, and I've been a production floor manager for most of my life, not a podcaster, not a sales guy, but production floor manager. And I've always thought that training was such an integral part of what my job was. And trust me, I've run a shop all by myself. I've had one employee, two employees. I've had 75 production floor employees. And if you would like to have a list of all the reasons someone can't come to work, I've heard them all. But training was such an important part of it to me. It just surprised me when I got outside of the bubble of my own production shop to see that most people weren't doing any training. Or I would hire somebody who had worked at another screen printing shop, and I would think, were you only there for a few weeks? No, 5 years. 5 years? You don't know how to do anything. You don't understand what the process is. So most people don't do any training. Here's training in most shops, and I'm obviously not just talking screen printing. All types of production. Watch what I do, or go over and watch what she does, and then we'll have you do the same thing.
100%.
Wham, bam, thank you very much. The end of training.
Absolutely my experience. As an operator, it really was just watch what we do. And frankly, there were times where I really didn't understand, and the operator who was training me didn't understand what was going on. I was a rare animal because I used to go and find the manuals for stuff. And that was always like, what are you doing? And I'm digging under some box under the machines going like, somebody has got to have documentation for this. Like, somebody has to know why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly right.
It was not normal to have a manual or to have anything in front of you. It really was do as I say, and watch me do this and repeat after me.
And when we talk about the opportunities in training today, and we're going to get into that, but in the past, I get it. What's the first reason? There's no time. We don't have time for training. And why is that? Because you manage your business in crisis mode every single day. And here's my favorite that people have said to me multiple times. They're going to take my double secret methods and they're going to go into competition with me, or they're going to take it to the competition. And well, here's my response to that. You don't have a double secret method. You don't have a double secret technique. Somebody somewhere is doing this. In my screen printing classes, I always everybody has to introduce themselves and really say why they're there. And there's always one person that goes, well, I've got the greatest t-shirt idea of all time. and I'm like, well, do you want to share it, or are you afraid someone will take your idea? And I'm thinking to myself, share it or not, I probably know 5 other people doing exactly the same thing you're doing. You don't have any double secret techniques, methods, or anything. So
I mean, don't get me wrong. There are special techniques, especially we get into the design and art portion of this. There are things that are, technique and talent based and what have you. But trying to assume, especially in the production side of this thing, I'm sorry. There just comes a point where you're like, okay, not only were there not secret techniques when we were doing this, and when I was doing this, and especially, throughout all this time, now that everybody has decided to become a content creator of some kind, like just about everybody's out there, all the versions, including the wrong ones, are out there. Like,
yeah,
all the secrets are now exposed. It's not weird anymore. We no longer have to campaign for get out there and say something. What we have to campaign for now is be careful when you do.
Well, yeah, and we'll get into this more, but
Sure.
One of the things that has dumbfounded me is, you would think that like people coming again to my screen printing class, that they're going to come in with more knowledge. No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
There was a time in screen printing where people would print flash, put it under a heater, come back and print the next color, put it under the flash. And the reason for that was their screens weren't burned properly. The screens weren't tight enough. They're using the wrong screen mesh. And that concept had virtually disappeared. And now I don't do a screen printing class where somebody doesn't raise their hand and say, hey, why aren't you flashing between colors? Because on the internet, so yeah, we've been flooded with good information, horrible information. And for a new person who needs to be trained, they don't know how to sort it out. So, and I guess for that, this new option about using the internet, using AI, using digital training possibilities isn't the end all be all. If you aren't of the training mindset, if you don't see the value in training, if you're still afraid someone's going to take your ideas and start their own business. And man, I've written articles called "Have the Best Trained Staff in Town," and I feel like every shop I've ever run, everybody in that shop was so well trained that yes, they could go out and start their own business if they wanted to, but they're there working for me because they don't. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. I had an owner say to me one time, why don't all these folks out there on the production floor have the entrepreneurial spirit? Because they don't want to be entrepreneurs. I'm like, they don't think about it like you do. Their priority is to do their job, do a good job. Everybody comes to work and wants to do a good job, I believe. And but their priority is going to the lake on weekends and making enough money to pay for the boat. And I don't want to work day and night 7 days a week as an entrepreneur.
Not everybody wants their entire financial life to be on the hook for that, and I understand it. I mean, that's okay. We need technicians. We need skilled people who are at that level who want to do that. Though at the same time, it's like you also want them to rise through your business to be able to train other people. And the funny thing, I always think about this, like with kids. There are certain people who have this concept where they're raising kids and they're like, all right, I don't want them to be exposed to certain stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you might want to at least talk to them about it, because if you don't tell them about it, they're going to learn it somewhere. And I feel like that's almost with the employees. You're like, now these days, if you don't teach them the way you want things to operate in your shop and they're confused, well, they're going to look for it because they feel the pain of not knowing what's going on. And all they have to do, if they don't have any other background or basis, they might even be doing it to impress you. They're going to go out and find YouTube University, and maybe that's how you want to do it. Maybe it's not. It may also be okay techniques. Who knows? But if you've got a way you want things to run, and most entrepreneurial people I know do, you want to make sure you teach them your way, your standard operating procedures. And one of the ways to do that is to make the training available in ways they understand. And as people get younger and younger, that's Generally not like me getting that spiral bound manual out from under the old machine.
Yeah. The very first job I had at the college bookstore, Athens, Ohio, on the campus of Ohio University, my freshman year, I remember the owner saying to every new employee, I appreciate you have ideas, but we do have processes, and so follow our processes. So,
Well,
and
hey,
again, a lot of things stick with you through your life,
hey, it's
And
like I said,
again,
you definitely want feedback from the floor, but at the same time, like the fallback position, the default needs to be stated for people.
yeah,
That
and
if you want a certain outcome,
I worked there all the way through college, and did the processes sometimes change? They did, as new things arose and new ways to do things arose. But everybody had to go in, follow the process to start with, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, and reality for me, the more I ever invested in training, the more likely those employees wanted to stay there. They Your employees appreciate you investing in them, investing time and effort into them. And the more I invested in training, the more efficient I was, and the better product that went out the door. So, I guess this isn't the podcast for, hey, you should be training, but hey, you should be training.
Oh, I think it totally should be, though, because I think part of this is people are going to hear, oh, digital training, I can release the work of training to YouTube and AI. And I'm like, probably not. You still need people who know what your processes are and know the technical nature of what you do to set those procedures up. It's just that we have these new tools to make it easier and to make it more palatable to different kinds of people who need to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
But you still very much need to take at least some kind of leadership role in your training if you want a certain kind of outcome, if you want an efficient, high quality shop,
If you don't want to walk out on your production floor and go, what the heck are you doing? Well, you told me to watch the video, and that's why. Did you watch the video?
They will do something. I mean, they will try to do something one way or another. And I've been every part of this thing except for, and I'm one of those people who was never the entrepreneur. I don't like to own the shop as much. I found that out. Like every time I've tried to take on starting something myself, I'm like, wow, I'm a great lieutenant. I am absolutely there to support what's going on. I will implement stuff. I will be the idea guy. But I surely love not having to write the big checks every day. I'm going to be honest with that.
And I've been on both sides. I've been on both sides of it, and I agree with you. You have to be totally immersed in it, and if you have other interests and other things like Aaron, Eric, you and myself, and Aaron. Look at all the training and seminars and things we've done. I think that we have a bigger investment on that end of it than we would in day-to-day doing that in our own shops. And
that's the thing. Doing the financials is an entire thing unto itself. If you're into the technical side of this thing, you may not be the best person all the time to handle that stuff. If you are the person who wants to get down and dirty with the technical part of production and art and whatever, you may not actually be the person to do at least the management portion. Doesn't mean you can't actually be the backer, but you might not want to be the person who actually runs the financials. That might be good to have somebody else do.
And then there's always bringing in the partner. Could be good, could be bad. I went to work for a company once where there were two partners, and when I walked in the door the first day, I'd mentioned that the president of the company had invited me and my wife to dinner. And the vice president, his partner, said, "Really? You went to his house?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what's it like?" Wait, you've never been to his house? Yeah, we kind of went our two different directions once we started the business, because vice president, wanted to be a little business, and because he wanted to take the profits and golf every day. President of the company wanted it to be champion. He wanted it to be this huge screen printing business. So I'm like, holy crap, this did not come up in the interview. And it was like in the conference room for manager meetings, it was pick a side of the table. Which team are you on? Yeah, it was. Well,
and I think that's part of this whole concept. Even though we're going to get back onto training from this and more on that structure and the tools. But I think the corporate culture is part of this. I think that's the thing. If you want to instill corporate culture, that's also part of the training and can be woven into the fabric of even the most technical thing that you do. If you want to
Exactly.
establish for people what expectations are going to be like, also things like, do you expect, and I think you should, before I lean out here and say that, do you expect people to be very open with you about feedback from the shop floor? How are mistakes going to be handled? How are you going to handle kerfuffles with customer service? Because it will happen for sure. This is not a if, it's a when. You're going to have somebody fight with you who's a customer. How are those things going to be handled? Those can be part of your operating procedures, but they can also reinforce, how do we behave? How do we present ourselves? What do we see this
Right.
company as? And it leads to, I'm going to get out in the weeds just a little tiny bit. I always talk about motivation with your workers and yourself. The thing that's going to make a worker motivated intrinsically by themselves without you having to constantly coach whip them into stuff is a little bit of autonomy. So they can do some problem solving on themselves, a path to mastery over the thing that they do, and a connection to the larger purpose of what your shop's doing. These things are all part of that. The autonomy comes from saying, hey, I've done the training. Now I'm going to let you go with the training and solve problems. Do what you have to do and come back to me if there really is a problem that you can't solve. And then the mastery is through the training and the opportunity to keep learning more. And then the sense of purpose can be, here's what we're about. And you keep reinforcing that as part of this process of letting them know, what you do and how you operate.
100%.
Yeah.
And back to the training part of this, here's the bottom line. Most people say, if they're honest, I don't know where to start with training. And so with digital opportunities out there, it's going to give us, for the people that don't know where to start, this can help you get started with a structure of training in your business, so that you're not standing in front of your group and it's like a buddy of mine said, anybody can do seminars, and he came back to the booth and said, oh my gosh, the door closed and flop sweat started running down my face. He goes, I don't know how you guys do this.
Well, first the flop sweat runs down your face, and then you do it anyway.
I said, no, I'm sure it was okay. And he goes, no, it wasn't. It wasn't okay. But I think a lot of us are like that too. They, standing in front of the group and teaching people how to do things. So, but by having some recorded training, that sort of thing, it can kind of help us get the ball rolling. And once the ball gets rolling, then you as a manager or as an owner can kind of jump in and add, okay, here's what we do in our shop. So anyway, I think it's going to give people the opportunity to kind of kickstart training to start with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But you had mentioned, can you turn over training to the internet? No, everybody listening, no.
Not
But,
entirely.
yeah, hands-on has to be a part of it, And I'm going to jump back to my screen printing classes.
Sure.
People will come to the class, and half the class at least will have said, I've been watching YouTube videos. And once they get into the class and they get out there and they pull a squeegee or they push a squeegee or they wash out a screen, they're like, you can't get this from watching a video. You have to get your hands in the ink. You have to get wet. You've got to see with your own eyes lining up a screen. And of course, this translates to all other decoration methods, but
absolutely,
hands-on has to be a part of this.
We actually have a comment similar to that. Barb says, I personally think AI cannot replace hands-on training. Boy, AI even being part of this statement, we'll get into that. But watching and doing to me are two different parts. I think that's absolutely true. I think the hard thing can be trying to get hands-on training at a location-based event. If you don't have like Terry's stuff, Terry's got an awesome setup where he's working with the manufacturer who's going to let him literally set up presses and do that. I know we have trouble sometimes in embroidery. We don't always have the ability to get everybody in front of a machine. That it's a very slow process, embroidery. So having everybody get a chance to run something is hard to do. I think you can still take this back and get on your own equipment and do the hands-on portion, even if you can't manage this. I would say if you can get to a hands-on event, absolutely get to a hands-on event, because there's nothing like it. But having an expert tune you in, absolutely huge. But seeing the interaction of, I know I'm just talking embroidery because it's what I do, the needle and thread and stabilizer, and you see it, the threads pulling on the fabric and how it deforms while it's running, and what changes if you turn the speeds up and down, the kinds of things that happen in the hoop. Ultimately, I don't think you ever get a complete feeling for it if you don't. In fact, some of the digitizers I've had to train that are the most difficult are people who come from the design world, the digital design world, and they're awesome designers. They're great artists. And then they get to the thread, and the physicality of that thread just stymies them, because they're like, I did this on screen, but once it's on that machine, it doesn't do what I tell it to do. And I'm like, yeah, the on-screen result isn't important. And then it's just, we have to rewrite a part of their brain that they're not used to. And it's like, that's actually harder than if you take somebody who's been embroidering for fun, even somebody on a little home machine knows more about what that thread's going to do and how it's going to react than somebody who hasn't done any hands-on. So I think at no time us advocating for watching videos or using digital training tools, it means that you can't be doing hands-on. You absolutely have to mix that in. It's just, you're right. It's part of it, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about where am I going to use this? And the first is onboarding. You know, you bring in new employees. You want that to be a positive situation. But no matter what size your company is, time's at a premium. So if you can use some kind of digital training, at least for part of this process, and maybe it's an overview of the embroidery process, or maybe it's an overview of direct to garment printing, maybe it's an overview of direct to film. You know, here is the nuts and bolts of what this process does. You know, here's why the film, while it has wet ink on it, goes through adhesive powder, and here's why it, you know, and so some of those kind of things, yeah, I'm cool with that. Having somebody sitting and watching a video so they have an understanding of what we do in our shop. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a video from our shop. As long as it's something that you agree with, you know, because, you know, Eric, maybe it's a video where it says, you know, for backing, just use a heavy paper towel. You're like, oh, it's okay. Let me stop that video.
Well, and we know the good thing is we do know more about vetting these days, and we are far from the days where suppliers and machine manufacturers weren't doing videos. Now they're doing videos, and in fact, high concept videos. They're well produced. They now have learned from the content creators how to make something attractive and interesting on top of the fact. Because we used to get just training videos was like, hello, I'm here with X Machine Company, and I'm going to show you hat hooping. And those videos were still very useful, but now we see these being produced by machine companies where they sound like a YouTuber. They're speaking to a generation that has grown up, like we said earlier. These aren't people who grew up with paper manuals and now are learning from YouTube. These are people for whom YouTube has existed their whole life. We have to remember who's joining the workforce. I had somebody the other day who was kind of like going, oh, these millennials. And I had to remind them, like, millennials are entering middle age. You're talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Gen Z is already like starting to become managers in some places. Gen Alpha is coming in. Like the kids stuff that you keep saying, oh, these millennials. I'm like, the millennials are in their 30s and early 40s. You're starting to, no, that's not how this works anymore. The time has continued to march while you're complaining. So it's like, now we have to realize that there are people who are coming into the workforce for whom there has never been a day without YouTube, for whom there has never been a day without social media, for whom versions of social media we use, like Facebook, which is one of our places we stream the most, are already like persona non grata. They do not mess with Facebook. So it's like we are in a different environment than we used to be. They're going to expect a certain kind of way of speaking, and that's okay. I mean, we can understand that. I'm not saying do the hello fellow kids thing and act like you're one of them. Use kid slang and get yourself looking really, pathetic by doing that. But you can be a little more genuine, a little more interesting than we used to be. And the good thing is, I think the manufacturers have figured that out. They understand that this is also mild entertainment for people who are curious about their products, But the great thing is for us, it actually gives us these punchier, more to the point, nicely produced kind of videos that we can use. And for, like you said, for basic topics, how to get hoop tension, how to thread the machines, most of that stuff is going to be pretty universal at a basic level. We might not need to reproduce everything ourselves. The stuff we do is more standard operating procedures where we need to start going into our process.
But I think it makes it easier for that new employee too to kind of have that concept. Okay, I understand what we're doing here. Can I go do it? No, but now I get it. I have a base now, and now let's build on top of that. So.
Well, and then they arrive at the training, because I mean I've absolutely had people arrive where they are like they've never touched an embroidery machine, and we've hired them to be at least assistants, and they want to be operators, and they've literally never touched it. They don't know which part of it moves. I'm like, the garment moves, not the needle, and they're like, we're at that level of knowledge when they get there. Yeah. If you had somebody where it's like, hey, watch, this literally shows you the machine run, it shows you the process, it says what we do, and then I give you a small bit from us about how we do it differently. By the time they arrive, then you can do the watch me and do what I do stuff that we always used to do. You still need that mentorship angle. Sure. I still think that's important, but they can do it with a knowledge of, oh, hey, they at least know like what is going on, what a hoop is, why we use what we do, what's going on as far as the basic process. I think that grounding is really, it just makes them more comfortable and makes the training we need that's not in those general places easier to accept.
Yeah, it's funny. Even people who, every business starts somewhere, and so even people who want to start a business, I talk to people every day, and a lot of them almost apologize. I want to do this. I don't know anything about it, but all I know is I want to do it. And my screen printing classes, I'm going to go back to that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll have 20 people in a screen printing class, and I'll ask for a show of hands who has never printed a shirt before, and half the class will raise their hand. So 10 of those 20 people will have never even seen it done before. All they know is they want to do it, that's cool with me.
That's a good place to be.
To do it, and some of those people have been very successful. Our guest 2 weeks ago came to my screen printing class in Nashville. So my favorite though is Tom Round when we were interviewing him. That was probably 10 years ago. And he's very successful screen printer, embroiderer, entrepreneur, owns a brewery, real estate tycoon now. And I said, hey, where did you how'd you get started? He's like, I came to your class 8 years ago. That was closer to 20 years ago now, but
totally.
People see something and say, I want to be a part of that. There's nothing wrong with that. And just make sure that you learn to do it so that you can then share with other people how to do it. And I think that takes us kind of to ongoing training. And Eric, I'm an evangelist for ongoing training. My concept 52-15 every week, 52 weeks. 15 minutes to start every week with some training tidbit. And we are helping you guys out there. We are building the secret sauce, and every one of those secret sauces, just go in and look which ones deal with what you do, and use that as one of your training sessions, and then discuss. Watch the session and discuss. So, if you're not comfortable, take this full circle. If you're not comfortable doing this training yourself yet, digital training, it could be your salvation. And again, we've got a lot of secret sauces up there, and man, they cover a lot of subjects, and it's a great place to start. And then you can build on it from there.
Well, and I think this is the thing. Even if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, there are, like I said, there are hosts of places where people are giving good training out. All of the magazine production places are doing training and podcasts that are interesting. The thing is, as somebody who is in charge of people, as a manager of people, you do need to curate that yourself a little bit. And it means you got to stay in the stream. I think all of us can get kind of complacent. 5215 is for managers too. It's for owners and for people who've been doing this for a long time. It's for veterans. If you don't yourself do that training, you're not going to be helping anybody for that training long term, because you're just not going to be in the stream of things, and you're going to be continually kind of going back to an old well. You got to keep letting the well refill, and that means taking in some of this stuff yourself too. Right. But the good thing is, and I know we're going to get into this more kind of when we're going to talk about building digital content libraries and stuff like that. There are now so many more tools to make it easier for you to create the stuff that's missing. And I think the other thing is copy the formats. Go watch a secret sauce, and it's like, I know I've done several times, like 5 reasons why you shouldn't buy a used machine or whatever. Whatever it is, like 5 things to look for when you're about to do this kind of production, or ways you should set up your production workflow. Go watch one of those. And go point for point and just say, I've got to do one that's about something else. I'm going to do one that's about finishing or packaging or how we do our e-commerce orders. Listen to one of us do it and just copy the format and do it yourself. That's one of the things that you can do. I think sometimes we sound like we have radio voice because we've grown up with people on the radio, which is like why I think some of the podcasters of a certain age will sometimes sound like we're doing like a morning zoo show or something. But that's the morning zoo. We do. We use the models that we've seen already before. Sure. And certainly I think that's fine. Use those models, watch other people who are training, and just do the same kind of training, do the same kind of stuff they do, but insert the information you have. And the other thing is, which we're going to get into this later, with like AI text to speech, stuff like that, you may not have, if you hate the sound of your voice, you don't even have to read these things anymore. Use AI text to speech and stick it underneath your training videos. And like I said, we're going to get more into those tools, but there is a way to do this stuff for yourself and just fill in on top of people like us who are releasing all this information.
I love that, because we didn't start out knowing how to do this either. This comes from years and years and years of jumping in and doing it and figuring it out, and take advantage of our years of success and failure, and go with our success.
Yeah, try and do the ones people like. That's the first thing to figure out. There's definitely some higher traffic videos to check out. All right, with that though, I think let's take a quick break. We'll go ahead and do a quick ad break, and when we get back, we'll jump into libraries of content and maybe some AI tools and some other fun stuff.
If you sell decorated apparel, then you're constantly on supplier websites like Sanmar, Alpha Broder, and SNS Activewear, comparing prices and checking inventory. Stop wasting time comparing prices the hard way. Just install PromoHunt's free browser extension. Then, when you're on a supplier website, PromoHunt will automatically compare your prices with all your suppliers and will let you know if you can save. With PromoHunt, you'll always be just one click away from seeing all your prices and inventory in one screen. PromoHunt shows other helpful information too, like similar product ideas, supplier phone numbers, preferred pricing, and coupons on thousands of supplier websites. PromoHunt saves you time and money, helping you quickly find and buy great products at competitive prices. The best part is that PromoHunt is completely free. Join 7,000 decorators and distributors that use PromoHunt every day to save time and money. Visit promohunt.com and sign up in less than 60 seconds.
And it's free. Always have to add that.
Awesome product, and honestly, anything that helps you deal with the constant drumbeat of ordering and sourcing is always helpful.
Especially when it doesn't cost anything. We love free.
But we do have a quick comment from Ramona, who is always with us. Ramona says, attention spans are really short. Keep your digital training short and specific. Boy, I got to be better at that. I'll say that's something I suffer from. I like to run on and run a saw at it. But I'll say in training, I tend to not do that as much, but I tend to be a little too stiff. I think what I need to learn now is how to do these short, bite-sized things that are a little more, easy to grab the attention.
I think the secret for you will just be to turn your hat around backwards, and this will be the quick and to the point, Eric.
Get myself ready for the arm wrestling that's coming with the incoming employees.
Well, you had mentioned building a library, and there's a lot of resources out there. Save and collect those resources, and I'll give you an example. I had somebody come up to me at a trade show actually this year, and he said, "Terry, I feel like I've been talking to you all week." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean you feel like you've been talking to me all week?" And he goes, "Oh, didn't you know at XYZ company?" And I'm not saying who because I didn't ask them if I could, but there's a very large company in our industry that uses a DTG training class, an 8-part class from Printing United Alliance that Aaron and I put together a year ago. And he goes, "Oh yeah, everybody in our company is required to take that class so that they have an understanding of DTG printing." Now, and this, everybody, so that you know what your company does, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
And by the way, for those of you who want to see that, that's over at ilearningplus.org. That's where you find those. Yes, it is a subscription thing, but there's also some free content there as well. Check that out. Worth checking out. They're good folks over at Printing United who put that together. And also, we always talk about those vetted sources.
Yeah, and they have training in all kinds of different areas, so it's very cool. But I guess my point of bringing that up is there are lots of training opportunities out there. So instead of a training binder that we used to have 20 years ago, you have training links. So
I will say I've been honored to see people who have collected my magazine articles into their binders, their training binder. That has always been like, wow, I wouldn't have bothered, but that's okay. I will say this though. I think that it's curating. It's like we said before, that curation of the stuff that's good, that's useful to you is probably the harder job now in looking through all this material. The thing to understand is, just like Terry just mentioned, we've got these classes from iLearning Plus. You've got classes that are related to trade shows. There are bodies of people who are kind of vetting that education, not maybe as much as we would want to yet, but it's not just let somebody loose on YouTube. It's here are some people who have work that's interesting that you might want to check out, and I think that's worthwhile to check out.
Yeah, there's nobody out there giving the stamp of approval that this is good education, so you have to do it yourself. You have to be the stamp of approval for your company.
But do remember, it's not just YouTube. I know it sounds funny to say that. YouTube has become such an, including my whole show is on YouTube. All my back episodes are on YouTube. But that's not the only place where this training lives. So when you are trying to find this stuff for yourself, when you're building up kind of the external links and training, remember all these other places. Remember the magazines. Remember the manufacturers. Even though a lot of that is hosted on YouTube, you'll find some of them, because they don't love how YouTube handles their content or ownership or anything else, either have their own walled gardens or they'll be on Vimeo or somewhere else that's not searchable in that YouTube ecosystem. So it's just a thing to note. YouTube's not the only place to go, and maybe not always the best place to go.
Correct. 100%.
Yep.
I wanted to briefly touch on something. Record your own content. The next time you're doing onboarding, record it and then edit it down so that it can be shown later on. Your vendors, and Eric, you mentioned how manufacturers are doing much better videos and things like that. Your vendors will come into your location and do training sessions. They love to do that. Why? Because if you have a relationship with them, you're going to buy from them. I've had dozens of vendors come in and do a training for my entire production crew on new emulsions, coating screens, on new fabrics, just all kinds of things. They will come in and do it. You just have to ask them and record it for future use. But what I want to really get to is using AI in your training process. And Eric, I'm going to turn this over to you, because you and Aaron are heavily using AI, and I don't say I'm kicking and screaming. I'm coming along, but
Yeah, and I'll say this: we kind of have a spectrum among the three of us. Aaron is really on it; like he's using AI, and he's pretty much 2 feet in. He went into it. I am scraping a little bit, like I'm digging my heels a little bit, and I'm going to tell you guys to be very cautious about AI, and I'll kind of make that dichotomy, known, and maybe you're kicking and screaming a little bit further on the outside edge. I'll say for me, I'm in this middle position saying, let's remember that it's a tool and not necessarily the best repository of information. Now, that's where I would like to make my big distinction before we start any of this. The information contained in the AI is not always correct, and it can hallucinate, is what they call it, where it will just say things that are false. So trusting it for technical information, nuts and bolts, if you don't know a topic at all, I really highly recommend that you study up on a topic from a more regularized source before you use AI, or you use tools that you can limit the source material from which the AI pulls. It'll still sometimes say things incorrectly, but it's just a thing to understand. It is not an expert, but it can be an awesome tool for you to use. So what I would say is it's good for the creation of training materials and the capture of trainable tasks to make it more accessible. And it's good for digesting training materials that you've been given. So that's the other thing. If you are somebody who's been doing training, if you are someone who's going to classes and you're getting big PDFs full of material, like if you go to one of my classes and you get a tiny ebook every time you go to a seminar, and you're like, man, I would like some way to digest that. AI can be part of that too. So I want to share a couple of tools that I have used to fairly good effect and that are interesting. I know Aaron's also used them even to more effect than I have, but I'm actually going to see if I can share my screen here, and we'll try this out. We may have to tweak with where the screen is or how big it goes. I'll go ahead and spotlight this very quickly, take us off the screen just for a second. This is a tool called Notebook LM from Google. So notebooklm.google.com. I will go ahead and post that into the comments so you guys can see that if you want to click on it later. This is one of these tools where that Google has released. And instead of just being a large language model that's out there like ChatGPT, something you've understood previously, you can add sources to it. And in this case, what you're looking at is I have added a source, which is my kind of ebook material that goes with my Digitizing Your First Design seminar, which is like a 4-hour workshop. And in this source, once I've uploaded, it's just a PDF. It's just PDF. It has digested it. It gives you a summary. It tells you what the key topics are in this piece. The whole handout is in there and you can still look at it. However, if we look at this piece, that's the handout that I use. That's the original handout. You can see that's all this material that's there. But Notebook LM also allows you to chat with it the way you would chat with like ChatGPT. You can talk to kind of the document, ask it questions. So I can ask it things about like, is auto digitizing feasible? I can ask that. And if that information is inside of this piece, it will actually ask that. And it gives you sample questions. Like I can ask that and it will go back to my handout and look at this. Auto digitizing is generally not recommended for creating high quality embroidery designs. And it gives you a link where you click and it's to a portion of this material. And you can actually put multiple documents into these to the point that I know Aaron's got one that's got a ton of his articles all digested in it. The other cool thing you can do, you can get an audio overview that sounds like a podcast that is propagated with two people. There's a video overview, which I haven't even gotten to see the video overview yet. I already started that out. And there's explainers that you can get reports, mind maps, and things like these FAQs and other sorts of notes that are part of that. So you can actually do an FAQ and you click that through and it gives you questions and answers based on it. So this digests this down into all these different methods of understanding that you might not otherwise have. And I can see, like I said, I haven't even gotten to take a look at these video previews, but it will go through and give you a preview and talk about the stuff that is there. Now, is it a perfect representation of what this stuff is or what I presented? Maybe not. But if you have kind of a way that you want to understand it, or you want a study guide, you want reports based on it, you want a timeline of what's going on there, or a briefing so that you can digest things quickly or understand a little bit more about it, that is a pretty interesting way to process down that information. And so I think that's something pretty interesting. Notebook LM lets you design that audio content out of it. Or let's just say you have written down your standard operating procedures. You might be able to throw that in that manual into Notebook LM and have a video or have a podcast version of it they could listen to, or have a question set like an FAQ where you might say, here are questions I'm going to ask them, like a quiz at the end, to say, hey, these are the key topics. What did you understand from these? And you can use it to also help you gauge how much your employees have understood of your training. So it's a way to generate more material and to process it. Is it perfect? No, you still have to vet this stuff. Once it's created this stuff, you need to listen to it. You need to look through it. You need to check out that FAQ before you hand it off. I would say certainly it still requires somebody to understand it if you're giving it to your employees. If you're somebody who's been to a class, though, and you would like this to understand something yourself, you can also just use it for yourself to help digest a topic down. I think that's interesting. Another tool that I wanted to show briefly, and I'm not going to go through anything else with it, I'm just going to show you the page, but I'm not really going to show you anything else with it right now, is a tool called Scribe. And I'll just really talk about Scribe instead of having it on screen. There's really nothing up that I have because I didn't manage to get a sample made in time. But Scribe is another tool that allows us to capture tasks. And what it actually does is it automatically records things that you're doing on your computer. So let's say we are doing, you've got an e-commerce thing, especially, let me just break down really quickly that the free version only does things that are happening in a browser. But if you buy the paid version, you can also use it for like desktop applications. What it does is with AI, it will record what you're doing and break it down into a how-to, where you will get step-by-step processes. So let's say you need to teach somebody how to add a garment to your e-commerce system, and you have idiosyncratic stuff that's not in the manual or a way that you specifically do it. Instead of letting them loose on the manual for whatever your e-commerce system is, you can sit and add something to the e-commerce system. You add a product using all of your idiosyncratic methods and the folder locations that are on your servers or whatever it is that you do that's just for you. You do all of those things, and then it will break it down into a how-to that you can then edit and then process out into a document that's good for your standard operating procedures. So Scribe will allow you to capture those digital tasks. And I know a lot of what I did outside of the process of teaching digitizing embroidery was helping with e-commerce and the process of trying to teach somebody how to bring in stock, trying to deal with inventories, trying to deal with definitely handling any sort of intake on creating new garment options or building new stores, required me to do things that weren't going to be in the manual, because there's always the idiosyncratic part of it that is, where do we have our graphics located? Maybe we have a pricing method that's not the one that's the basic one in the manual. Maybe we also do something with the descriptions that's interesting. Like I know, depending on what store you're running, I ran a bunch of hospital stores where we had to have in each description the unit that it belonged to, because only certain people could wear certain colors in different units in the hospital. And so that was part of our process, is to put this like disclaimer in each one that came from the departments that kind of dealt with that compliance. That's not something that's going to be in a manual anywhere. That's not going to exist anywhere else. With Scribe, I could have just recorded me going to my boilerplate and pasting it in, and I wouldn't have had to share all this little weird stuff that we did to get it done. It would have just been recorded, and I could edit the descriptions that the AI pulls out of what I did. So stuff like that really can help. It's like we have this ability to use these tools. And like I said earlier, and this is something, even if you're on like free tools, something with Microsoft 365, let's say you want to do a video, but you don't want to be the person recording voiceovers for it. Clipchamp from Microsoft will let you do AI voiceovers. I mean, there's tons of text-to-speech versions where you could take something you've written and turn it into a voiceover that you can throw it on a video. This stuff is just more and more available and easier to do. But yeah, like I said, all of these tools, though, what I'd like to kind of bring in together, as I've mentioned all these different tools, is that at no point in this process can you just release it and ask. You don't just go to like Google Gemini, which is kind of like their ChatGPT or ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. You don't just go in and ask it, how do I run production for embroidery? That's not what I would ever suggest you do with AI. And I think a lot of people think that's what it's going to do. That's not what it is. It's more like, here is my list of topics, or here's the way that I do an embroidery job. And you paste that in there in the way that you've done it. Give me key points, a summary, and a flow chart. And if it can then digest the thing that you've made with the understanding you have, or like I said, if you have something from a professional, from someone like me or Terry, where we've given you some materials and you're having trouble like making yourself flashcards or making yourself key points or questions, or you want to listen to it on your headphones as a podcast, even though it was given to you as a text file, you can do all of that stuff and digest information in a way that's interesting. So for me, it's about using it as a helper, as a creation tool, as something to help digest information. But as an originator of ideas, I don't love AI. That's where I dig my heels in.
Can I give you a real life example of how you can use this tool?
Yes, absolutely.
When Aaron and I did the direct to garment class for Printing United, we had to include test questions. And I remember messaging Aaron saying, man, it took me hours to do the test questions for my sections. He's like, oh, I just went to Chat GPT and said, I need 8 test questions for each of these sections, and spit them out.
Well, and that's the thing. But he input the materials. That's the thing. He was like, exactly. Here's the material. Give me questions out of it that reflect the base stuff. And then he went and looked at the questions. That's the other thing.
Oh, of course. But here I am reading through again, or re-listening to it, and are the questions any different? No. I mean, it took just like you said, our material and created the questions from our own material. It wasn't going out into the ethos saying, okay, here's a good question. So anyway,
it's something that I've said many times. Actually, we were talking about this before the show started. Every time I've done this, I've found factual errors. If I just ask it like, hey, how should you use thinner threads in embroidery? And it'll mess up something about terminology every time. Like there's something about that. It just can't handle the math on thinner threads because as the numbers go up, the thread gets thinner. And for some reason, the AI just doesn't love that. And so it constantly misterms the threads. Mostly it's okay. However, if I feed it my guide to working with thin and thick threads and then say, give me some topics, it's been reliably pretty darn good about FAQs, like you said, review questions and summaries. Very good at that. So it's just about knowing what it's good for.
Well, this has been awesome. Yeah. I think bottom line, Eric, is what we're saying to everybody is just like there are lots of new decoration methods. We have multiple options now for training. It's just a matter of how you use them. So
I agree. I think we went a little over, Dave. That's my fault. I got excited. I apologize.
Well, unfortunately, all three of us have a tendency to get excited about subjects. And I know you and I and Eric or Aaron as well are very excited about training, but let's get this wrapped up. Yeah. I've got coming up my complete screen printing business course. I'm going to be in Chicago at Atlas Screen Supply September 6th and 7th. If you can't make that one, I'll be there November 1st and 2nd, and watch for all my upcoming events at terrycombs.com. Aaron's got the Business by Design Masterclass and Workshop. That's going to be next week, August 5th through 6th. And Eric's putting up a link to that. Also add your calendar, Printing United Expo happening October 22nd and 24th around the corner in Orlando. It will be an amazing show. If you want to get in for free, you can use the code 141404. That's 141404, or go to printingunited.com/attend and hit the register button. How about you, Eric?
Today I've got take up number 230, and this one is called Digitizing Tools Uses Beyond the Book. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how some of the idiosyncratic ways, well, I'm using that word a lot today. I use digitizing tools, sometimes other graphics tools, to do work that's not covered in the documentation. So from custom guides to sacrificial shapes to fun with import and export methods, I often use my tools in ways that aren't covered by the book learning that you might get from the manual. So I'm going to talk about that today at 2:30 Mountain Time, 4:30 Eastern. So join me live to share your special techniques and your odd tool habits. Check that out at erichcampbell.com and click the Take Up tab at the top to find the show and more episodes on YouTube. Other thing I'm just going to go ahead and cover one more time is last week I got the opportunity, or at least it got published a long time ago. I got the opportunity to talk with Cassie Green and Christine Sharif on the Threads of Change podcast. So I'd love for you guys to support those guys over there. We talked about empowering future innovators through the apparel industry education. So another germane topic, if you liked this topic, that is over at bit.ly/44y1gsb. Check that out in the show notes. And I would love for you to support their podcast as well. They're having a lot of people on to talk about some really progressive, cool stuff. So, but with that, why don't we go ahead and get to the secret sauce?
Let's hear the sauce.
Absolutely.
Garment decorating rock stars, what's up, all my apparel peeps? So can I ask you guys a hard question? I'm going to ask you anyways. Have you ever sent out a quote, felt good about it, and then got halfway through the job and realized, uh-oh, I just paid myself $3 an hour for that work? I work with people all the time, and once we start breaking things down, they realize that if they kept up like that, they would be better off getting a minimum wage job and then just clocking in and clocking out. I've been there. A lot of other decorators are there too. And I'm sure you've been there. That stings, but there is a solution, and that's actually my secret sauce. Did you know that you can train an AI to help you estimate smarter, to price those jobs better, not just faster, but more consistently and with profit baked right in? AI isn't just for creating robot t-shirts or spitting out thousands and hundreds of pieces of junk artwork out of Midjourney. It can be your math nerd best friend. You know, that math nerd friend who doesn't miss a decimal and always asks, hey, did you remember to charge for that rush fee? Head over to your favorite AI like Gemini or ChatGPT. Start teaching it about your business. If you have a business plan that includes your goals, relationships, ideal customer profile, day-to-day operating expenses, and some of your main processes, then just feed it right into the AI. Oh, wait, you don't have that? Well, guess what? You're in luck. Sign up for the Business by Design Masterclass that's coming up, where I'm going to be teaching you how to create a business plan you will actually use. Head over to oursuccessgroup.com/business plan to sign up. I digress. Tell the AI everything you can about your business and your costs. Then start plugging in stuff you know about the job that you're estimating. Things like the type of garment, the number of colors, the quantities, the turn time, meaning when does the customer expect it, and any other details you have about the job, like name drops or specialty finishes or anything that's unique to that particular job. After you've trained it and fed it all that information, then just let AI crunch the numbers by asking it questions like, how much ink will you likely use? How much time will this take? And what do you need to charge to make a healthy margin, not just cover your costs? Once you've started working with the AI, you can ask it to build it into a spreadsheet with ChatGPT, or you can have it help you write the logics for a price calculator, or really just keep the thread going so you can continue to price from this one location. Now, if you want to get really advanced, I suggest creating a custom GPT that can be used internally by your team. It's really like turning your brain into a button. Your team can click it, get a solid, profitable quote without you having to stop what you're doing. You're not just printing shirts, you're running a business. And guessing at pricing is like gambling with your paycheck. AI helps you take what your gut feeling is and turn it into a system. And systems equal freedom. That's the kind of stuff that gives you your nights and weekends back. Now, if you want help getting started, join the upcoming masterclass that I mentioned earlier, or even pop into the Entrepreneur Success Hub on Facebook, which you can find at osg.link/group. Now, go take a big bite of this wonderful tip covered in this secret sauce and master your pricing.
I feel like we're very 2025 from start to finish in this show.
We're certainly trying to be, and I'd say it's good that we come to the close of the show with that kind of note. We're actually on task, on topic, roughly on time. So thank you, Harry, for all of your insights on training. I very much appreciate getting to hear your perspective on this.
You as well, Eric. Appreciate especially all your AI information that you shared, and I'm sure everybody appreciated that. And of course, also running the board as we go.
Always. Yeah. Next week, we've got the ASI State of the Industry, as we heard earlier, with Teresa Hagel and CJ Medica is going to be on. So tune in for that. That information is always good. And I think this very much like we're talking about AI and training. The other half of all this stuff is measurements and finding out more. And boy, do they do the measurements for us. So it's good to add that in.
Exactly. One of my favorite shows every single year. So until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Erich Campbell, sitting in for Aaron Montgomery.
And that was the Two Regular Guys.
Here we go. We're out.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Two Regular Guys. We're here because of listeners like you, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. For more valuable insight, be sure to visit our website, 2regularguys.com, and join the conversation on our Facebook page. And hey, if you or someone you know has expertise, a unique perspective, or a story worth sharing, we'd love to have them as a guest on the show. Just reach out. Remember, success in this industry isn't just about the equipment you own or the techniques you've mastered. It's about the mindset you bring and the connections you build. Keep learning, stay curious, and don't be afraid to think differently. Keep pressing on, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Two Regular Guys.